I'm Carol Cohn, and welcome to Purpose 360, the podcast that unlocks the power of purpose to ignite business and social impact. I'm joined once again by a dear friend, longtime contributor, and one of the most visionary leaders in our field, Balaji Ganapathy. Many of you will remember him from earlier episodes when he was leading social impact at Tata Consultancy Services. Over more than 2 decades at TCS, he helped build one of the most purpose-driven organizations in the world. Now, he stepped into a bold new chapter, launching his own venture, Social Positive, focused on closing the gap between good intentions and real scalable impact in our nations, around the globe, and in our communities. In this conversation, we'll explore the lessons he's learned from his time at TCS. While he believes purpose is still the ultimate growth engine for an organization, and the 4 critical gaps holding back social impact today. We'll also dive into leadership, partnerships, and what it takes to drive meaningful change in a highly complex world. It's an insightful, energizing conversation full of ideas you can apply right away. So let's get started. For how many years were you at Tata?
21 years.
21 years. Welcome back to the show. He's been a frequent guest, whether it's a full podcast. Our first one was May 2020, right when COVID's hit. And then we've done others since. So welcome back to the show, Balaji.
It's a pleasure to be back, Carol. You're so generous and kind, and I truly value the friendship and the partnership that we have. Each time I come on the show, I'm at a different chapter in my life. The first time, as you said, it was building a purpose-driven organization on the legacy of 150 years of history at the Tatas. The second time was my own social impact journey of looking at what I learned and scaling and growing the impact globally. And now I'm building something new. So it's great to be back. But one thing I was thinking in preparing for today, that the core has not changed, right? So who I am, I've always been somebody who build organizations, teams, and leaders who serve society and the planet with humility and a pioneering spirit.
I love that you've said in the past that everything in my life has led me to where I am today. And so I want to start with your parents and growing up. And a little bit, I always feel that we are so shaped by our early, youth experiences. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Thinking back to growing up in Trivandrum, which is a small town in the southern part of India, I was born into a joint family of about 40 people. And we had modest means, but boundless generosity. Growing up, I don't remember buying a new book or clothes because, you had cousins who would hand it down, or neighbors who would give you comic books, or my parents' office network where, we would go during the summer break and knock on doors of his colleagues and get the books from their kids. So, those experiences early on definitely showed me that the scarcity was there, but the scarcity taught me something that abundance never could have. That dignity is not diminished by sharing, right? It is, in fact, multiplied by it. Along with that came this urge to travel and see the world. And I did that. I had the blessing of being able to do that in the general compartments of trains in India in the 90s. And as a teenager, traveling all across the country, crisscrossing the network of the old Indian railways, I pressed shoulder to shoulder with migrant workers, farmers, everyday people, students, old people, young people, people from different cultures and languages. And I can tell you that's the same experience I've had traveling around the world in US, in Australia and Canada, Mexico, other places too. People who had nothing were willing to share everything, right? So looking back 30 years or more, I think those journeys really crystallize something that it took me decades to articulate. What I shared, that, equal We are born with equal potential, but not equal opportunity. And access to opportunity and how to help people empower them to get that access to opportunity became my North Star.
I love that. Access to opportunity became your North Star. So I want to talk about some of the twinkling of that star and your background, because you've got a background in engineering, you've got a background in HR, and then ultimately you became the lead in terms of social impact and purpose at TCS. So can you talk about how a little bit about each one of those areas contributed to your North Star today?
Yeah, it is not by design, it was by accident. I would say that I am where I am today, but intentional accidents. I would say intentional choices made over a period of time. The first one was when I was studying engineering at the College of Engineering, Trivandrum. In the 90s, I had this crazy dream that we could design a car that used hydrogen and oxygen and created clean drinking water as its emission.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, went and knocked on many boardrooms and tried to pitch that idea with plant floor managers, with leaders, sales, and it didn't work. So, what it taught me is that any innovation is only as good as it is adopted. Technology does not change the world, people adopting technology change the world. And I started moving from machines to human systems. So that is point number one. The second pivot came much later on, 10 years into TCS or so, after my initial entrepreneurship days. And, I came into US just as the great financial crisis was unfolding in early 2009, right? So, my first week on the job, I was driving through the streets of Detroit where things were boarded up and the downtown looked like a ghost town. And it was a hard landing. It was a wake up call. It was an economy in free fall. It was a new role. TCS was doing great work. Tata was doing great work globally, but growing our business here was the goal. And pairing up with the business leaders to do that, or domain leaders and functional leaders to do that, was my job. But I realized that what the country needed, what the community needed at that time, people did not need to see the solutions that you bring to the table. They wanted to know whether you're trustworthy and bring value. And that crisis then became a catalyst. So I started building strategic partnerships with internal leaders who believed in putting community at the center. And I learned that other companies had the same. So, it just became an extension of doing business together, but also doing work to uplift the community together. And that is bought over a period of 10 years. I saw business grow from 3 billion to 10, 12 billion in the geography itself. So companies that serve society together do not just survive downturns, they emerge stronger. And that brought in that conviction to help me move from the business facing role to more of leading social impact and where I am today.
You have in the past, you have declared purpose is the new tech. Now, in this Trump world, geopolitics, war in Iran, AI everywhere, data centers taking over all of our lands, is purpose the new tech still part of your philosophy? And if it is, what does it mean?
No, absolutely. I'm doubling, tripling down on that because see, what is your reason for existence? Right. So that doesn't change just because of what's happening externally. You adapt to what is changing externally. So every company, I saw it in my lifetime working with TCS as a company that was leading technology and helping companies across the world, across all kind of sectors and domains, adopt technology. What I saw is the power of originally enterprise systems. Then in the early 2000s, 2010s, you could see social, mobile, analytics, cloud coming through. And then when tech became a buzzword, every company wanted to be a tech company, right? The Airbnb model, the Netflix model, etc. But in doing what they're doing, what they were really doing is to embrace technology to make it easier for them to live their purpose, right? However they define it. So technology, as I said, does not create longevity. Purpose creates longevity. So if you really look at what purpose can unlock, it's not a trade-off. It is what I call the value quad, right? You have business growth, employee purpose, community impact, and shareholder returns. All four can rise at the same time. And we are living example of that. I saw that for 21 years at TCS. We saw 30 times revenue growth. Purpose is not a cost center; it's a growth engine. So purpose is the new tech, whether it is the tech is enterprise systems in the early 2000s, the social media analytics and cloud in the 2020s, or AI today. The technology that comes may change, but why you exist and how you can serve your most important stakeholders, that doesn't change. So that's what is leading me to believe that every enterprise, if you want to last and bring your purpose to life, you have to create an organization that's carbon negative and social positive. There is no way around
Right. So you were very fortunate to grow up in the Tata Group, perhaps the world's foremost, oldest purpose at the center organization. Now you've got a new company, Social Positive. We're going to talk about that. But you're always out speaking. You're at conferences, you're talking with your colleagues. And I know with great love and affection, they look at you and go, "Oh my God, you've done such amazing work." You talked about some of those outcomes. But I don't work in a company that has the history and the ethos and the soul of Tata. How do I move my C-suite along? I know it's a tough question. How do I move my C-suite along so that we move to be part of strategy day in and day out? We are not the afterthought.
it's easy and hard.
Okay. It's easy and hard.
So the easy part is that purpose cannot live in a department, right? So whether it is the foundation, CSR, social impact, sustainability, ESG, whatever you call it, cannot live in a department. It has to live in the DNA and the operating model of the organization, right? I think when you shift from thinking about how do I make the case for my program, my initiative, and get a sign off, but I started seeing it that way. It was like seeing the matrix that, yeah, I may have limited resources. When I started, we had limited resources. But then I looked at the organization. No, it's a huge organization. Why am I thinking of my few member team or a few $1 million as the resources? Every of the 600,000 people is part of the CSR and the impact team. All the 48 business units are part of the team. 2,000 customers are part of the team. So when you think like that, you start to think in abundance. And then came the 650 million and the 30 million lives across 55 countries. So what is the lesson? The lesson is you need to, of course, have great interventions and programs and solutions that you think addresses where need is high, resources are low, and only your organization can make a difference. That is necessary, right? But then you take your organization, its people on that journey.
Let me ask you, let's talk about partnerships because I know when you talk about Social Positive and you say, you've had conversations with thousands of people and you've had over 200 different partnerships and such. Can you give 2 or 3 secrets to your success with partners?
We are diving into really good territory here. I think every practitioner will recognize what I'm able to describe or are going to describe now that, you have conviction, you have data, you may have the board support, but the gap between strategy on paper and programs on the ground is where we spend most of our careers, right? So convincing leaders, that's what I said was the easier part. The harder part is building the operational rhythm to make it happen, right? So what do you need to make it work along with partners? One, shared measurement across teams. That's a must. If you report certain things to your board and then you ask your partners to report other things, they have other things that they report to other set of stakeholders or part of a collective, it's not going to work. You have to get together, look at the problem in a value chain, and then really say what are the measures that we need to go after, and be humble enough to say that we don't need to measure the whole world. We need to measure these things, and these are the things that are going to matter. But establish that across the teams. Second is building an operational cadence that connects strategy to frontline execution. Don't stop at just giving grants, issuing RFPs and being happy about identifying good organizations. Help them with the frontline execution, because mostly the lessons that you and your organization has on how to unlock last mile issues is not something that a small community organization or a medium sized nonprofit will have. So if you are there as a partner, not as a sponsor or a grantor, I think the equation changes, right? The third, and I would say the most important thing is in partnerships and making this work is building leaders at every level who feel ownership of the mission, right? So I used to ask myself every day when I wake up in the morning, when I look at myself in the mirror, am I working for the CSR team? Am I working for TCS? Am I working for the community? Am I working for society at large, right?
And you say,
Society at large.
oh,
Absolutely.
society at large. Okay.
That comes first. Then comes the community that we have identified to serve. Then comes the company that I work for. Then comes the team. So you always have to defer to the larger mission that you are out there to serve. Because, say, for example, if you have program teams and marketing teams, for example, if they wake up in the morning, they think that my job is to market, my job is to do the program, then you're losing sight of what they call the bricklayer versus the cathedral builder, right? Both of them are having bricks in hand and putting it against the wall. But one thinks that they're just laying bricks. The other thinks they are building cathedrals. And the difference is that ability to envision what that end goal, that mission is going to lead to.
Great. And I love that. So we're going to skip by now this incredible 21-year career, all the different things you achieved, great awards. I mean, in terms of like the Civic 50 and I mean, what, TCS achieved. So now Social Positive it's over a year old now. How old is it now?
Yeah, it's nearing a year.
Tell us about Social Positive. And then we'll get down deeper into some of the offerings because they're astounding.
I shared this with you. I'm happy to share with the audience that, I didn't start out to start a company, right? I looked at where is it that the need is highest, resources are lowest, and my experience and my background can make a difference. So I have to eat my own dog food, right? So the same principle I applied. And I always enjoyed the best times where working with field staff, working with leaders in this space, not as sage on the stage, but in close quarters. And in talking to leaders in this space all around the world, in the US, some of the network was so generous to open their doors and continue to welcome me well beyond my time at TCS. I saw that they all recognized the same four disconnects and frustrations. I saw it for 26 years. I saw it in 55 countries. And these patterns are not because somebody is doing something wrong, but I recognize that it is structurally a problem. So, hear this. If we were to think of social impact as a country, it is a $2.3 trillion economy. That's what I discovered when I did the research. So $2.3 trillion flows into social capital through domestic philanthropy, through ODA, through cross-border philanthropy, through impact investing and all that. But that's higher than or nearer to a Brazil or a Canada, right? So you should have the kind of outsized outcomes that exist for those countries. And then I realized that that is not the case. And that is when I started to name and label the four gaps that I believe are keeping us from good intentions to good actions to good impact, right? So first is needs to funding. What I saw is that capital flows towards where funders live and operate, not always towards where the need is the highest. I think we subliminally recognize this, right? Yes, we have a responsibility to the community where our offices are, our employees live, absolutely. But to recognize that, for example, in the US, rural communities are home to about 19% of Americans, but receive only 3 to 7% of the philanthropic grants. I mean, it blew my mind to really put the numbers and recognize that 3% of the overall 2.3 trillion capital is only flowing to 10% of the people who need it. So it's a $160 billion gap for the poorest of the poorest, who have the least means. It should be disproportionate. I looked at India, same kind of issue. Maharashtra, which is one of the most prosperous states in the country, receives 23 times more impact funding, CSR funding than Bihar. whereas Bihar is 5.5 times more poor. So to summarize, what I saw is it's not about blame. It is proximity is where you start to give, and we can change that. So that is the first pattern. Second pattern was we have great intentions, but 83% of organizations say that impact is a priority, which is great, right? But only 25% are achieving measurable progress. So the gap is not about intention. It is good intention, generosity is there. I have met the leaders, I've sat in those seats. But translating strategy to operational programs on the ground is not easy. It took us a year and a half to build the operational infrastructure, even at TCS, a great organization that has everything aligned in terms of wanting to do the right thing. It takes time to build that. And often our systems are geared towards organizations that are or people that build strategy, but very little infrastructure on how to translate it to execution on the ground. So that's the second gap, strategy to execution. Third is implementation to impact. What I saw is most of us are measuring and reporting outputs, right? And we it is a pet peeve. I know in the conferences we go to, we sit in the sidelines and say, hey, what can we do to bring about a system or a framework that can change what we are measuring and reporting? Only 86% of organizations, when I tracked, are tracking only outputs. Only 14 are measuring outcomes. And even lesser are looking at long term impact, that is causal, right? So the leaders know this. They want to measure outcomes. I think we have good solutions, but the systems are not making it easy. So that is the third pattern I saw, implementation to impact. And the fourth one is evidence to scale. And this is what hit me hardest in the last 5 years or so, especially after COVID, when I started going and visiting with others who are doing great programs on the ground, whether it is in the field in India, in the US, as I said, Australia, Mexico, so many places, Philippines. I went and spent time on the ground. And I saw that solutions existed. For example, ultra poverty. There is a proven solution from 22 years ago. Why is it that we have not solved for poverty? I know a lot of people would have the same angst and ask the same question. Because the system that is built to show pilot success is not the system that is required to scale at population level. So it takes 17 years on average to move from proven pilot to population level adoption. Not because evidence is weak, because the systems for scaling, the funding bridges, the policy partnerships, the leadership capacity, they're not in place. So these are the four patterns: funding to needs, strategy to execution, implementation to impact, and evidence to scale. So that is what led to the birth of Social Positive. This is the market gap. Everybody is working towards each of these four gaps individually, but there is a connective tissue, right? In our lifetime, we want to see impactful change happen at scale. So who doesn't want grassroots impact at population scale? It is all of our. I'm just verbalizing it and providing a space where I believe we can do it together.
So I love that you describe Social Positive as AI native impact consultant. And you have used AI for some of your core services. So can you explain your vision? Talk about the three services and how they are, dare I say, dynamically using AI to advance our work.
Let me start by saying that AI native can sound like a jargon. So I want to make it very real in terms of what is the practitioner's aspect of it, right? Well, how do you put it in practice? How do you build tools? My goal is that, every practitioner in this space should have the collective intelligence, the analytical power, and the wisdom of those who came before us, right? That's how we start our journeys. So the collective is a way to really bring practitioners together to not share speeches in a conference, but really share answers to hard questions that are difficult to solve for. Right. So it is a community of practice, a community of practitioners. And instead of what just going and living in a moment, which is definitely required, whether it be in a podcast or a conference, what if it could harness all of that and build the insights from that? Right. So if 10 of us have similar insights on how to deal with our board or with making the case to our executives, that should be shared intelligence that is open to all in our sector. Right. If we have insights on how to help nonprofits identify and get grants, we should be able to share it with a larger group of nonprofits, thousands of nonprofits, so that they can level themselves up against well-resourced organizations who can make those grants and those proposals, right? So the collective is a way to share open intelligence across the network, and I welcome anyone who's listening, anyone who wants to join to be part of it. Now, Impactscape and Rika are really products of what an extension of what I saw is required for each of us as a leader to operate on, right? Now, if you are a business leader, if you are going into a market, like I said, if you think of yourself as a CEO of a community and helping solve problems for the community, you are accountable to that community. So first and foremost, do you ask yourself the question, where does the need exist? Where is the capital flowing, right? When I ask myself the question, the $2.3 trillion and where it flows, that is the first version of Impactscape, and that's available for everyone to see and experience. I would welcome, listeners to go and experience that at a global level. But then at your own, sitting in the seat that you're sitting, if you're sitting in a corporate, if you're sitting in a foundation, in a nonprofit, a family office, and you're working in a state, you're working in 10 counties, you're working in 3 countries around the world, you ask yourself the question, do I have a real view of what the market space is? And nothing exists today. Right? You have to wait for 3 months and commission a project to do this. Yes, it's good to do, and that's necessary, but that should not be where the effort is put. This is intelligence that is available. What Impactscape does is to bring it together. So, what government is doing in terms of helping citizens through its social services, what is the gap that then exists at a state, county level, or a federal level, state level, county level in the US, for example, or central, state, and district level in India, for example? What are the gaps that exist? What is the current level of capital that is flowing against that? If you want to work in elder care, you want to work in mental health, you want to work in education, you want to work in gender, these are thematic areas where we have data available. So you can sit together with your leadership team and look at this and have a meaningful exercise of planning for where the need is highest, resources are lowest, and your capital and your resources can make a difference. And the third product, I spoke about Collective, I spoke about Impactscape. The third one I want to talk about is Rika, where AI is today hallucinating and providing responses that you can't rely on, you have no confidence on. So if you have questions and you ask a generic LLM an answer, can you believe it? Can you trust it? But what if you could have access to curated, not the open internet, but curated materials, benchmarked research? You had access to practitioner knowledge and wisdom of those who came before you, benchmark data, and that is available as an AI ally.
This is to be in terms of the decades of experience you've had and your knowledge of what's available out there. So the trusted resources, the speed at which you can access it and feel confident about information you're getting back, again, to develop strategy and direction. It's not just an AI tool. It is using AI plus the human interaction and analysis for it. So I think it's extraordinary. We will put links again to Social Positive and your various entities in our show notes. I want to continue because you've been spending a lot of time in Asia. And I think that you're serving as a commissioner on the Commission for Asian Philanthropy. You've been bringing incredible foundations together and thought leaders in various venues to truly advance the practice of philanthropy and social impact in Asia. Give our listeners a little bit of a taste of what is happening in Asia and what your vision is for that commission.
It's incredible challenge and an incredible opportunity. A lot of us don't realize, but 60% of the world population lives in Asia. So, 60% of the challenges also exist there or more, right? The beauty of Asia is that it is probably the only continent where needs are growing, but the resources to address those needs are also growing. So it is not a depravity. There is some abundance that is coming along with the challenges that exist. So one of the first learnings I had when I looked outside of India and started deep diving through the Commissioner Nation Philanthropies work into other jurisdictions, all the way from Japan to China to Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Saudi, UAE. All of these are jurisdictions where millions of people live, right? And huge systems, financial systems, government systems, community systems exist. First and foremost thing I learned is Asian philanthropy is pluralistic. Asia, for Asia, recognizes that Asia has its own deep traditions of giving, right? Collective stewardship that I explained, family led philanthropy that spans multi generations, faith based giving, community led models that are embedded in the fabric. So these we realize are assets to build on. So in the future, what the commission is looking to do is to look at how do you improve both the quantity and quality of philanthropy so that it can serve nation building and global agendas, right? Working alongside the countries and regions, but also globally.
Great. We need to wind this down a bit, but I would like to ask a question I always ask. For young people who want to get into this field, they want to be involved in social impact. They want to be involved in whatever, forget the label, but they really want to be involved in purpose. What are you suggesting to them today?
See, don't wait for the perfect job that combines career and purpose, right? So it's not like, okay, you do your part in your career and then you find your purpose. Start where you are, volunteer, build skills, observe, and you will find that there are certain things that stick to you because it breaks your heart. And you will realize over a period of time that that is what you're uniquely positioned to fix. I love volunteering. I love going to community organizations and serving there. But I realize that I'm better at building teams and organizations that can serve that. And that's what helped me move in that direction, right? So purpose is not something you find. It is something you build one decision at a time. And that you fan the flame.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so beautifully stated, but I also want to take you into the end where we ask really quick questions. And so you might have a one-word answer or a sentence.
Okay.
Okay. The first question is, what's one word that best describes your work?
Leapfrog together.
What keeps you hopeful the days that this work feels heavy?
I think the young people and those I meet on the field every single time, they have the answers, they have the aspiration. We are just enablers.
What's one lesson you've learned from building purpose-driven systems at scale that you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
Programs fade, leaders endure.
What's one small action people can take today to advance purpose or create impact in their own communities? One small action.
Well, if you put your hand up to do something, before you do it, ask the question, where is your current community investment going? And then ask the second question, is it matching where the need is the greatest?
And then the last thing is, if you could leave listeners or viewers with one idea or feeling today, what would it be?
I think it's a tough world out there, like I said, and you may feel at days hopeful, at days despondent. So you already have everything that you need to make a difference. I'm telling you, the world will survive, thrive, and yes, today may look hard. So the question is not whether you want to do something; it is where to begin. So start at the first step.
There you go. I love that. Well, Balaji, you never, 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 ever disappoint. You're always giving more and give generously. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I always leave the last word to my guest. So how would you like to wrap this up? It's a lot to wrap up.
There's a lot to wrap up, but I just want to be grateful for the friends and network and leaders who have been in this place, who have continued to welcome me with open arms. And Carol, I want to thank you. I think you and I have spent a lot of time together over this past year, and it has been a blessing for me. You are one of the first people, I would say, who saw purpose not as a trend, but as a transformation. You pioneered this field before it had a name. So I think we owe it that you are continuing to help move this space. Social positive would not exist without people like you, mentors and friends like you, who have on whose shoulders I believe we are carrying this work forward. Last thing I want to say is that success to me is when we build leaders who build other leaders. We build teams that build other teams. We build institutions that build other institutions. That is the leapfrog together effect. That is generational change. So my lessons of growing up in a modest, poor family in Trivandrum to a small town, Whitehall Station, where I live with my family, where sharing books then and sharing experiences now, it's all the same. I think if I can sum up this whole time spent with you, Carol, grassroots impact, population scale, that's been the vision. And now we have a home for it. Come, let's do it together.
Thank you. I mean, there is just so much that I continue to learn from you. You're such a joy, and you've contributed so much to the field, and I know that you have a lot more to do. So thank you, Balaji Ganapathy. You are the real heart in my soul.
Oh, we do it together. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by some amazing people, and I'd love to thank them. Ann Hundertmark and Kristen Kenny at Carol Cohn on Purpose, Pete Wright and Andy Nelson, our crack production team at True Story FM, and you, our listener. Please rate and rank us, because we really want to be as high as possible as one of the top business podcasts available, so that we can continue exploring together the importance and the activation of authentic purpose. Thanks so much for listening.